Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is such a pleasure to rise in support of this very excellent bill presented by my very excellent colleague from Simcoe North. The bill is important. It speaks to principles fundamental to just government, to fairness and transparency. And I'm sorry to say that these principles have been sorely lacking in the actions of the Liberal government over the last 10 years. So for those just tuning in at home, every year the Canadian Revenue Agency for the last 10 years has forgiven or written off more than $1 billion of taxes or loans owed. More than $1 billion. And in the last fiscal year of 23 to 24, it was $18 billion. As my colleague just mentioned, this is on the order of our entire defense spending, which is about $35 billion a year. So $18 billion of forgiveness of loans written off. For those at home, and I'm thinking of my friend Dave, who's a plumber, my friend Ryan, who is a contractor. Yesterday we had a skating event put on by my office in Kitchener. I met Dragon, a small short-haul truck driver, and Libby, a grade 1 school teacher. Did they receive any forgiveness on their taxes? Did they receive any write-offs on their loans to the CRA? The answer is that they didn't. The vast majority of these write-offs went to large corporate fat cats who have big lobbyist budgets, who spend a lot of time in the offices of the government across the way. The CRA is systematically forgiving massive corporations the taxes that they owe to the public. The Globe and Mail reports that last year, 11 corporations, just 11, accounted for nearly a quarter of the write-offs. This arrangement raises the question, who is the government working for? Are they working for the people, or are they working for their friends on Bay Street? I can think of two cases in recent memory where the same question arose, where the same principles of transparency and fairness were broken all across the land. One is the COVID pandemic, where mom and pop stores, I'm thinking of, so at the beginning of the pandemic, I was teaching medicine at Queen's University in Kingston. There was a hardware store downtown that stood for 70 years. It was run by the Vandervoorts, I think it was called Vandervoort General Store, and unfortunately it closed after 70 years of continuously serving the community while Canadian Tire and Home Depot and Walmart all stood open. Similarly, small-time mom and pop gyms were closed down while major branches managed to stay open. And how was that? Well, through my work in politics, I've gotten to know some of these lobbyists. They had gigantic contracts lobbying governments, both federal and provincial, to stay open in a way that Vandervoort hardware store simply could not do. Another major example is the SNC-Lavalin scandal. If I were to go bribe the dictator of Libya and provide strippers to his sons, I think that I would go to jail. But if I was the proprietors of SNC-Lavalin, I would get the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, in the Attorney General's office, violating the principle of prosecutorial independence, which, by the way, is the same principle that the President of the United States broke and resulted in his first impeachment. So SNC-Lavalin is able to get the lobbyists who have the ear of the Prime Minister to get sweetheart deals, to get forgiveness of a similar sort the CRA is dishing out to massive corporations, and mom and pop are not. Not that I have any interest in bribing the dictator of Libya anytime soon. I'm glad that got a laugh. So what this bill does is restore some of the fairness and some of the transparency. If this bill passes, which I dearly hope that it will, if the CRA forgives more than $1 million of a loan, and I think or taxes, I think the vast majority of Canadians will never see $1 million, let alone have a tax bill of over $1 million. Then they at least have to say who they gave it to and why. It's very simple. It's not even saying that they can't continue to exercise this forgiveness. It's just saying the public is owed a debt. The government, in its boundless wisdom, has decided to write off that debt. We need to know who, and we need to know why. And that would, at the very least, give us the opportunity to look at the lobbying registry and see how much that corporation paid on lobbying the Liberal government, and to start to ask the question whether those two numbers are related. For those watching at home, I have to say I was so struck. Shortly after my election, the first time I opened my parliamentary email, there were literally hundreds of invitations to meet with lobbyists. There were hundreds of invitations to attend receptions in downtown Ottawa. I instructed my staff, if the meeting doesn't say Kitchener, South Hessler, somewhere in it, if it's not from a constituent of mine, I don't want to take it. But let me say that from what I have observed during my time here, many of those meetings and many of those receptions are attended by the members opposite, and it is my view that these corporations don't spend all that money on lobbying for no reason. They know how to get a return on investment, and I think that they are getting that return on investment, as evidenced by the $18 billion that the government forgave large corporations in the last fiscal year. So we want transparency, we want the registry, we want to start asking these questions. It was, by the way, from my understanding, the common practice for years and years that parliamentarians could at least ask order paper questions to put it to the government, who did you forgive and why? But just in recent years, the CRA has stopped providing that basic transparency. So we used to have it by convention, and somehow it's gone away over the last 10 years. And now we need to actually write it into the law that this transparency must exist henceforth. And I think it's a shame. I wish that we could use the honor system and could continue with our tradition of open government. It's particularly a shame given that 10 years ago, Justin Trudeau came to power promising to have the most transparent government in Canadian history. And in this and so many other ways, we have been betrayed. So that is about as much as I have to say about it, Madam Speaker. I know that the members opposite like to say that they are in a new government, they're doing new things, and I think this would be a tremendous opportunity for them to turn away from the legacy of the Trudeau government, from the legacy of restricting transparency, and beginning to restore, even in this small way. Again, this is not going to send anyone to jail. This is not going to stop the practice of gigantic write-offs for corporate fat cats with a stable of lobbyists, but it is at least going to give the public the answers that they are deserved. So I urge everyone in this House to vote for this bill, and for the members opposite, when they vote for this bill, to consider apologizing for their actions during COVID and apologizing for their actions during the SNC-Lavalin scandal. I hope that Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott will be invited back to their caucus soon.